What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Liam and Chris of the almighty Windwaker. It is so great to be able to have you here. Thank you both for coming on the show today.
Woo!
Anytime.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, anytime. Anytime. Before we get into everything with the new music, there was a question I actually always wanted to ask you back in the day. You know, as a diehard Legend of Zelda fan, and I know that Wind Waker comes from the game of the same name, I just wanted to know, out of curiosity, was there ever a copyright issue with Wind Waker in a way? Because that did come from Shigeru Miyamoto's brain. I just always wondered if there was, because I know a lot of fans have wondered that too, in a way.
Yeah. Chris, we've never had a copyright strike, have we?
No, I don't believe we have. I've been in it since day one, and we've never so much as heard from Zelda about the name. So
Yeah. Nintendo still managed to collaborate with us since then, so they know of our existence. But maybe there's a difference between like the one word, no spaces. Maybe that we've got a little bit of leeway there.
Yeah, fair enough. No, because I wanted
But
to.
no, nothing so far.
I wanted to start a band and call it Twilight Princess, so I'm just yeah.
you'll be
Hell,
fine.
you'll be fine.
Awesome. That is still my favorite Zelda game of all time, and I will fight to the death on that. But it's so awesome to have you all here, because I was just listening to the new album Hyperviolence, and it is absolutely just a magical, epic experience. For people who haven't heard the full album yet, like I had the privilege of doing, do you feel like that the singles that we've heard so far, such as Break the Rules and Villain, Sirens, The Wall, etc., is a good representation of like what this whole record will sound like, or is this just one little taste of what we could be expecting?
I feel like we definitely have shown. I reckon we've shown 3 out of 4 corners of it at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor.
The middle
3 out
of the
4 corners.
tracks, we've got the really heavy track. Like we've got the Wall Out, which is obviously super heavy. Break the Rules is hella pop. I reckon there's a few more surprises in there, but we've shown a bit of the range at this point.
Was there at all sort of like a preconceived vision of what Hyperviolence was supposed to be like? Because at least in terms of visually, the album artwork sort of visually connects with Love Language in a way. So was this meant to kind of be like a continuation or like a sequel, or was this meant to almost signify like a brand new beginning for Wind Waker?
All right. It could be a little bit of all of the above. I think there was an element of wanting to take what the band had learnt from Love Language and bring it, and with this, like with the lineup sort of changing a little bit, this was a new beginning as well. So, but I know that we wanted to take what we'd learnt from Love Language and sort of improve upon the things that we thought were weaknesses. So I know for Chris and a couple of the other members, that was sort of the focus of the album. Love Language kind of bounced from, wall to wall a lot. And we wanted to try and create a bit more of a cohesive, focused journey and kind of showcase the maturity in our songwriting. So that was one of the main things. But as well as like there's themes that are similar, but they're kind of approached or perceived in very different ways. Like I feel like Love Language is more of an exploration of what love is within oneself, whereas this is a bit more to do with, I guess, the self in terms of its identity and what's expected of you and what you expect of yourself, and kind of that grinding conflict that you have between like what you feel like you want to be or who you want to be and who you think people think you are. If that makes any sort of sense.
To quote Avatar,
sort of like
to quote Avatar: The Last Airbender, is it your own destiny, or is it a destiny that someone tried to enforce on you?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So that's probably like the major difference in terms of themes on the album. But I think there was a level of consciousness like to connect the two. One to just, I think there was a sense of like, well, we don't want to alienate the fans that we already have. While we've got this massive lineup change, while I've rejoined the band, while Connor's in the band, while the future of the band is kind of not certain at some point, ages ago. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of like reassurance for our audience. It's like, no, it's still us. It's still it's still
Yeah.
Windwaker, you know.
Yeah.
We
Well,
didn't want to completely reinvent the wheel on this one. I feel like we wanted to hone it a little bit more.
you
And maybe the next move we make, we'll be looking to do something a bit more off the track.
Well, you definitely hit the nail on the head because, like, I feel like Wind Waker has been through a lot in your now 10-year career. Congratulations! I know you guys started in 2014, and here in
Yeah,
2024 to say that you're a band for 10 years for any band of any style is a tremendous accomplishment, and congratulations on that. And there is such an evolution when you compare like the Empire EP to the Enter the Wall EP and whatnot. There's always been, I've always considered Wind Waker to be a very experimental band. Sure, I feel like for purposes of marketing and whatnot, you definitely fall into the Australian metalcore scene, but you also stood out in your own right between the metalcore elements, the electronic elements, and whatnot. I do consider you guys to be a very experimental band. So trying new things and bringing in new elements or sacrificing some other elements it can't be that difficult to bring in new elements just because it seems like there really is no formula that you tend to have to sort of like enslave yourself to,
No,
Yeah,
you
go
go.
for it, Chris. No, you
I
first.
feel like there's no rules with it at the end of the day, and we love to make music that makes us excited. And making the same songs again and again wouldn't make us excited either. And I love songs where you can hear that people had fun making them. So I think for us, always trying to keep it interesting and exciting is what makes us us. I really think.
This album was fun. Was interesting for me personally because of what you just mentioned there about the having fun part of it. Like, it's not to say that I don't have fun making music, but historically when I've made music, I've kind of had this like very artist sort of like painstaking approach to it, where it sort of takes a part of me. Whereas with coming back for this album, there was definitely at least 2 or 3 songs in particular where the process of it coming together was so organic because we were just having a lot of fun doing it. Rather than all us sitting in a room very silently on our phones trying to write lyrics in a notes app, it was just sort of like, it was like how you imagine like, I don't know, like a hip hop crew in the studio, like they've got a line over there and then another person in the other corner's just come up with the next line and you're all kind of just freestyling. And you know what I mean? Like, and everyone's just getting really into it. That was kind of how we were making a lot of this album.
I love when we have like a little breakthrough and everyone just starts shouting. That's one of the
we get really loud
for a record, but those are like the key moments for me.
I've always wondered. You mentioned a good point, Liam, too, because I never understood why people feel the need that being a true artist has to coincide with not having fun. I never understood where like that comes. Like, people wonder why artists, and being an artist myself, I'm allowed to kind of but people wonder like why some people look at artists like they're so snobby and like rude or whatever. I think it comes from, I'm an artist, I'm not supposed to have fun. I get the suffering artist thing makes for a good press release, but I'm just wondering where like the coincide like. And let's be real, even the most brutal, darkened, the world is evil, misanthropic metal bands, I could even tell that they're having fun when they're on stage and interacting with the audience and hanging out. So where does the idea of artists not having fun, when did that become sort of like a requirement to be a true artist?
I don't know.
Oh.
I mean, you could probably point to certain historical figures and being like, am I gone? Am I still there?
Yeah, I got you.
We're still good?
Yep.
Sorry, I thought the internet dropped off. I think, you could look back at certain historical figures that were considered, these artists and maybe people are modeling themselves off that. But I do think it sort of comes down to the music that you make and what you're trying to express, because we're not, as artists, you're trying to express a certain emotion and a certain experience. And those aren't always fun experiences, sometimes those are things that just don't leave your head, and until it's some sort of, maybe not necessarily therapy, but it's something that's cathartic, and you want to get it out there. and it's just an honest. I think that the suffering artist thing honestly just comes from an honest place. You know, I think it's rather than having this kind of like flexi glamorous kind of veneer where everything's okay and it's all a bit kind of superficial. I think that's maybe where it comes from. It comes from this idea of like just being honest and truthful and authentic with your audience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we would definitely like to have a bit of both. Where we obviously there were definitely points in the album that were painstaking, but there were so many fun moments as well. And I look back, I'll remember both of them. But I think having that balance is what helps us make a diverse album.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you led me perfectly into the next question, because the diverse and the contrast, and there is sort of like a balance, because I feel like, you never want to be a one-trick pony. You don't want to, write the same song over and over again. There is also, though, you do want to have a bit of like an identity. It's kind of like if you do the same thing over and over, people are going to call you repetitive. You experiment too much, people will say that you're directionless, and some people say that the no style being a style in itself is kind of very played out. So is there sort of like a fine line? Is there almost kind of like a threshold to how outside of the box you're able to go in a way, or do you not even really think about that?
I don't think so. I don't know. You might disagree with me on this, but I have always thought that nothing necessarily sits outside what Windwaker can be. But it's the way we do it that always makes it sound like us.
Yeah. I fully agree with that. It's definitely
we've done before, and we'd find a way to do it our way.
Yeah. And I was going to touch on this with a previous question, so I'm glad it's kind of come back around. But like, all five of us like have very individual, like particular kind of influences and strengths to what kind of songs that we can make. Like, we all have different sets of skills for what sort of songs we need to make. So the way that it comes together is kind of the beauty of Windwaker. It's the different people that kind of get involved in it and make this like gumbo pot basically. That's kind of what makes Windwaker. And I feel like you need to stand out in especially in today's landscape of music, because there's so much of it, and there's 10 million different bands that are starting every week, and you've got to find a way to stand out. And I think if we can do that in the most authentic way we know how, which is just making music that we love, and paying respect to the music that we love, and sticking to our mission of making music and making new ideas and keeping it very current and keeping it possibly even futuristic in a way, or what we predict to be futuristic, then we've done our job. We've done what we can to make a Windwaker record.
Yeah. And every artist, whether you're a musician or you're a painter, you're an actor, filmmaker, whatever medium you work in, all artists want to grow one way or another. And I feel like we all do evolve one way or another as well. But as you evolve, this is sort of like a debate I like to have with artists, or kind of like a brain picky question. Is the evolution that an artist experiences, is that something you can control in a way? Again, Windwaker being a very experimental band, you're always able to bring in all these different electronic elements and these super brutally heavy elements and kind of move all along the spectrum. And, there's so much that you can even evolve from there with all the different elements. Do you think that you can control that? Do you think that you kind of control where the wind, pun somewhat intended, takes you? Or does evolution happen naturally? Do you just kind of have to like not even think about it?
Are you asking that question from the perspective of an audience member or from the perspective as an artist?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I haven't gotten that.
Because I think if you were asking the question from like the audience perspective, can you change the way that an artist evolves, if that's how I'm interpreting your question, right? I think you can. I don't think you should. I think an artist should obviously be left in control of what they want to do, but I think audiences now more than ever have that power, depending on what kind of band it is and whether or not they're willing to sort of buckle to their audience's expectations. But I think they definitely have the power to, with communities and stuff like that that's been put together. But I guess from an artist's perspective, I don't know, maybe Chris, you have a different answer.
And that's up to them, I guess, whether they would want, whether the artist would cave to that or not. But
yeah, exactly.
Some fans really do want the same record again and again.
We've got case studies for both, really, don't we?
Does an artist evolve naturally, or does that? I think an artist evolves for as long as they keep growing, or as long as they keep taking in new things around them and new music that's coming out. And if you lock yourself into where you were when you were 25 and all the music you were listening to then, and you get complacent that what you were doing then worked, then you won't keep evolving. But if you're constantly trying to keep your finger on the pulse, there's no way you wouldn't evolve.
Yeah, and the same could go for inspiration as well. Do you almost seek out inspiration? Can you go, whether it's for writing lyrics or for coming up with different compositions, can you seek out and go looking for inspiration, or is inspiration something that you just kind of have to let strike you in a way?
I don't think we quite have the luxury to let it come to us sometimes. I mean, I'd love to live in an ideal world where it just came to me. And a lot of times I try to, lure it to come to me. But I think, when you've got deadlines and you've got people that are waiting for certain music, there's a certain point where you just have to get on with it, and the answer is there. You just have to actually search for it yourself. And yeah, I think it's just about, kind of deciding when it is that you actually are done and you've actually executed upon that inspiration. I mean, we're lucky that we're also different, that we can inspire each other in a lot of ways. Chris inspires me a lot, and vice versa. So I think we're lucky to have the dynamic that we do, where that inspiration is just there in front of us, and we can have conversations, and that can spark the inspiration that then gets us a song, later that day, or later that week.
I really don't think it's a bad thing either. Deadlines can be really good. Some artists have infinite deadline, have infinite time to do it again and do it again and do it again, and sometimes you do so many reiterations of a song that the song loses all of the soul that it had at the start.
Yeah.
That it's almost better to have, for some types of artists, it is definitely better to just have a firm cutoff at some point and say, okay, we get it to where we can from here to here, and then we move on.
And going back to the question I asked earlier in the interview, like comparing Hyperviolence to like Love Language with the sort of conceptual nature of it. I don't know if these albums would be considered or classified as concept records in a way, but like, do you feel that maybe the conceptual nature or the sort of messaging or meaning can also dictate the music in itself? Could maybe a lyrical idea or a saying guide your hands with regards to how the music is laid out, or do you prefer to have like a full song composition before you know what the meaning of everything is going to be?
Ooh.
I like to have the concept before I've even put lyrics down. So I usually have this order where I kind of have the concept and the music kind of happen. I'm not sure what's left side for you, but the first bits are the concept, and that's usually derived from how the music's making me feel, and then I'll write lyrics that are based on that concept. And I think for this album, I feel like we had like a bit of a through line start to happen at least halfway through the process. I think when we first started Hyperviolence, it was just like we just had this like bucket of songs, and I knew that they were about things that I was thinking about, and I knew that they were about what my place is in all of this, Windwaker lifespan, or at least this chapter of Windwaker. So I guess I approached it conceptually in that sense. It is a concept album if you're looking for it, but it's not like a strict, like we're telling you a through line narrative. This is more just like a time capsule of like where we were at when we were making this. And yeah, so I think we tend to try to have a concept that's derived by the sound before I even put lyrics on. That's something for me. I don't know about you, Chris, whether you just find meaning in later.
When we write, we really, especially since like these last two records, we've really made an effort that we don't write an entire song from start to finish as an instrumental. I really like to. have vocals coming together as we're doing the whole song, because I think that's the most important part for me. And I think it's the most important part for most people. And the vocals should be dictating the direction of the song as it goes, and the lyrics should be as well. I really that's important to making the song flow the best way possible.
Yeah, and also
you can
go on.
I was going to say, you can fall into traps when you write like a full instrumental, because you're not really thinking about the overall sort of contour and direction of the song, and like vocally, which is in the context of our music, it's going to be like the centerpiece. I mean, it's not always that way with every piece of music, obviously, but in terms of the way that our music functions, that's going to lead it a lot of the time. So you can kind of fall into a trap with like not thinking about that.
Definitely.
You know.
And the final question I wanted to ask you, and I know to the viewers of this channel, I'm going to sound like a broken record even mentioning this, but I really wanted to talk about it, especially coming from you, because I've talked about the Australian metalcore movement countlessly. I've interviewed Make Them Suffer. I interviewed North Lane, In Heart's Wake, not Parkway Drive yet, hopefully one day, but like I've gotten to interview Alpha Wolf, I would say most recent example as well. It's not only a very popular form of music in general, but I'm noticing that the metalcore genre, bands that have been sort of in that category, have really gone off to be very experimental and do great things. I think a very noticeable example, Bad Omens, right? And then you take another example, a band like Dance Gavin Dance. I mean, I remember when they were opening for Upon a Burning Body back in the day. Like, I'm just wondering, and I think Windwaker is a real good example of just the direction that our scene and the music that we love is really evolving. Because when you look at like metalcore, take it back 15 years ago, I mean, it was a good genre, Killswitch Engage, All That Remains, they were all still thriving, but it was still more or less kind of underground. I never would have expected a band like Parkway Drive, for example, to be having shows that are just behind Rammstein and their level of production and whatnot. I'm just wondering, what is your take on the current scene nowadays? Because I really think that, I really want to know, like a touring band, I'm so excited for this North Lane tour coming up because I can't wait for more people to see you and be inspired by you. I'm just wondering, it seems like the metalcore genre is the perfect example. I'm sorry that this question's taking too long, but it is the perfect representation of the future being genreless in a way. And I'm just kind of, I don't even know really what I'm asking anymore. I'm just wondering what your take on the modern day scene is.
Do you have an answer, Chris, or do you want me to take this for the minute?
I think I actually just think is this specifically in relation to Australian bands, or is this
Either
metalcore?
Either or.
What I feel like the future kind of is genreless, and I've been feeling for the last maybe 2 or 3 years that we're really coming into this era of music being whatever you want it to be, which is honestly all we've ever wanted to do, and it's now just becoming popular to jump from genre to genre. You've got artists like Poppy that were just doing these obnoxious changes and people were loving them, and I don't think you could have gotten away with that 5 years ago, or maybe not 5 years, 10 years ago. And I just think that is where things are going. I think people's attention spans are shorter now than ever. Maybe TikTok's responsible for that. And because of that, it takes a bit more to keep people's attention. So constantly changing or doing things that people don't expect really works for this demographic.
And you wanted to add something, Liam?
I just think music is dead. It's all over. If there's going to be a last album that you listen to in your existence, it's Hyperviolence, because it's the best thing. No, okay.
You're definitely going to make headlines like Lamb Goat. Pick that shit up right now.
I was thinking about just like jumping straight into that, just be like, it's all garbage. No, but
you're still too young into your career to be able to start saying that. Give it a couple more albums.
Give it a few more years. No, look, I do think there's actually an interview documented, I think before 2020, I think it was in 2019, and I did predict that 2020 would be the decade of music where we're sort of blending a lot of genres. Hyperpop has reached its peak. Maybe it's come down a little bit, but that idea of blending genres and kind of approaching it from like a really blank canvas and just kind of like splattering all sorts of things. I think that's definitely the era of the 2020s. How long we'll sort of see that for the remainder of this decade, I'm not too sure, but I do think there is also there's a cry for like more like nostalgic traditional music as well in metal that I've also started seeing discussions on online, which I think is really interesting. So you've kind of got these two pillars of like what is considered commercial metal now, which is you bring these your spirit boxes, your bad omens, your poppies, all that are sort of fusing more commercial sounds in with the veneer of like metal. And then you've got sort of hardcore metal fans that are like, oh, what happened to all these nostalgic kind of core bands that like, or that sound, where's that now? Because it's not, the identity is like so different. But I'm glad that we have both. I'm thinking maybe next decade we'll maybe see a resurgence of more sort of traditional kind of streamlined, clear, narrow genres. But I think for now we're all just enjoying like the big gumbo pot, as I described it earlier, of just like different sounds. I mean, the globalization of the internet has had a lot to do with that, and the fusing of cultures. So you can get somebody like me who doesn't really listen to, the core bands from 20 years ago, but I can be in a band with a member that does, and then we can kind of go back and forth and try and meet in the middle there, so.
Yeah, and I got to tell you too, the way I look at it is we're going through like a resurgence. Like, take the new metal movement, right? Think about how many stadium bands: Korn, Disturbed, Slipknot, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, System of a Down, Incubus. Like, a lot of these bands that are still headlining stadiums. I think now, with the rise of the Bad Omens and the Sleep Tokens and the Spirit Boxes, I think we're continuing in that same vein. But before we go, because I know we're a little low on time, first off, I want to thank you both so much for your time today, not only for this awesome interview, but for just giving us more amazing new music. Is there just anything else that you'd like to promote for Windwaker? I know we got the North American tour coming up. What else could we be expecting from Windwaker in the near future?
Well, we've got Hyperviolence coming out July 12th. So we're very excited about that. And I think at the time of this recording, it's the day before we release a new single, which is tomorrow. Might be Saturday your time, but we'll be releasing our single Get Out to all streaming platforms and video viewing programs. So we've got that. What else are we doing, Chris? We've got a few shows in Australia that we're doing as warm-up shows.
We're just doing 3 little intimate shows. We just wanted to pack out a few little dive bars for a bit of fun before we go off to America. This is a bit of a warm-up. And then Hyperviolence comes out while we're in the States. I can't remember what city we're in when it comes out, but we're going to be over there. So you're all going to have to come party with us for that one.
Yeah. Get a show, come to a show, get a ticket, pre-save the album, do all that stuff.
Yeah, you guys come to New York City, Irving Plaza. I live just 15 minutes away from that venue by walking distance. But
sweet. So we got a bit of pizza?
I'll show you the good pizza spots if you want to meet up beforehand. But
sounds good.
But July 9th, I believe, is the New York City date. So close enough for us. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Windwaker. Be sure to check out Hyperviolence July 12th. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
Woo! Peace.